stock does. It takes sort of a semi-automatic, if I'm using the terms right, and turns it into an automatic, a machine gun, which is banned. So let's bring in CBS News legal contributor and professor at Loyola Law School, Jessica Levinson. And we also have CBS News chief legal correspondent, Jan Crawford, joining us now from Washington. So, Jan, I'm actually going to start with you. Can you just kind of like give us the basics of the case, who brought it, and what were both sides arguing?
Sure. I mean, we have to go back to 2017, 2018, when, like you said, after that horrific Las Vegas shooting, then President Trump decided he wanted to do something about bump stocks, which, of course, was used in that shooting that ended up killing 60 people. So he directed the Justice Department and the ATF to come up with some regulations where they could ban bump stocks by classifying them, as you explained, as a machine gun, because a bump stock actually attaches to a semi-automatic weapon so that it can fire hundreds of rounds a minute, similar to how a machine gun works, but a different operation, as the court ruled today. So why was that interesting? Well, because the Obama administration repeatedly had concluded that you couldn't do that you couldn't ban bump stocks under the law that banned machine guns because they're so different, and that only Congress could ban bump stocks. So in comes Donald Trump and says, Obama wouldn't ban bump stocks, but I'm going to, and I'm directing my DOJ to pass this regulation. That's what they did. Now, come up now to the Biden administration. A gun dealer challenged that regulation, saying, you know, hey, listen, only Congress can ban bump stocks. And so he sues. And now the Biden administration comes in, is defending it, saying, well, we think we should be able to ban bump stocks too. Today, the court said, no, the Obama administration got it right. Only Congress can do this. And this is a case, in my view, about congressional dysfunction. Here is an issue that 70 to 80% of the American people support, a widely supported gun control measure. And because Congress was unable to ban it, that's when former President Trump stepped in and said, well, they were going to do it. This should go back to Congress, which could pass a law banning bump stocks tomorrow. There's nothing to suggest that would violate the Second Amendment, but they have not been able to have the political will to do it.
So, I mean,
that's your summary.
No, that's
a good summary.
An excellent summary.
Yeah.
And so then, of course, the question to Jessica is it similar to what we were talking about yesterday when it came to mifepristone, which is it's not really about guns and whether one is an automatic weapon or it's not. It's the fact that the Supreme Court is saying this is not the purview of this. Congress should be the one to regulate this, not the President of the United States through executive action.
Well, it's not really about the Second Amendment. I mean, everything that Jan said is, of course, right on, in the sense that this is not about whether or not, under the right to bear arms, under the Constitution, can you ban bump stocks? This is whether or not the ATF, an executive agency, could say semi-automatic weapons plus bump stock equals machine gun, and machine guns are banned under federal law. And the court said, and it's a very technical opinion, so it really is an opinion about guns. I mean, they go into detail about, can you fire one shot by a single function of the trigger? It frankly is an opinion that reads like the oral arguments that really went into the details of how guns function. How much pressure do you need to put on a trigger? But it's not about the constitutionality. Just like yesterday was not about whether or not the right to obtain an abortion is protected under the word liberty in the Due Process Clause, this is not about the Second Amendment saying it is repugnant to try and ban bump stocks. This is about Congress not acting to do so. It's about the wrong actor trying to implement this restriction.
I think that's really interesting, because here we have an accessory that on its own is nothing. It's just an accessory, right? When you add it to a gun, it possibly, you could argue, turns it into a gun that is banned. But the bump stock on its own is just an accessory. That's it. And there are many accessories to guns. Jan, can you talk about just how the vote came down?
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with Jessica. I mean, it very much reflected how the justices kind of staked their positions out during the oral arguments, where the conservatives in the majority were focusing on some of the technical words in the law, and what is a machine gun and how that trigger operation worked, and whether you kept your finger on the trigger or not, or whether you had to repeatedly fire it like it's a semi-automatic weapon. Because, again, What this regulation was trying to do was classify bump stocks as machine guns when they attach them to a semi-automatic weapon. So the conservatives in the majority felt that a semi-automatic weapon with a bump stock just operates differently than a machine gun, and so therefore you can't consider them the same and ban them the same. The liberal justices at argument, and I'm still getting through this opinion, but at argument, and based on my quick summary, are arguing the same thing, that you shouldn't be looking at the trigger and how that works. You should be looking at the fact that it's just spraying hundreds of bullets in a row. So they had a slightly different approach, and that's why they came down the way they did.
So is there any precedent setting here at all, Jessica?
I think the precedent is one we've seen in other cases, which is the Supreme Court saying to Congress, or this isn't the way, or saying to the executive agency, this isn't the way we do this. And we've seen this in other areas. I mean, we saw this in immigration. We saw this in student loans. We've seen this in a number of areas where it's quite clear that Congress had the power to act. They didn't. And so a president tried to act through an executive agency. Maybe it was an environmental regulation. Maybe it was immigration. Again, maybe it was trying to cancel student loans. But in many of the cases, the Supreme Court has been very consistent in saying, you are not the right person to try and do this. And we will frankly see more of these cases this term that I know Jen and I will be talking about, where there is a question of the power of executive agencies.
So will this have any impact, I guess, on any other sort of gun modifications? You know, plenty of people modify guns, or it's just not about the gun. It's not about the modification. It's about Congress is the one that regulates this.
Well, I mean, yes. Or you want me to go or you go? I don't know who's answering. Hey, Jessica.
No, Jan, sorry.
Well, no, this is obviously, I mean, this is about bump stocks and machine guns. So, I mean, I think, and again, looking right at Congress, there is another big gun control, gun rights case that we're still waiting on that will have, I think, a far-reaching effect on other gun laws. And that is whether or not people who are under domestic violence restraining orders can legally own a gun, or whether they can be subject to gun bans. That, I think, could have a wide-ranging effect on other people who are seeking to possess guns, whether it's felons or drug addicts, and we're waiting on that decision.
And so finally, Jessica, do you think we'll get another decision this morning, or do you believe that the court is done for the day? Or maybe this is a Jan question, but.
All the questions are good, Jan questions. So we got an R number. We are done for the day. We're done for the week. And we can put a lid on the Supreme Court. We have, I think, 22, depending on how you count, big cases left, and just a few weeks. So it's going to be a busy end of June.
All right, Jan and Jessica, always great to have you in these moments. We're going to be talking to you, as you said, Jessica, over the next couple of weeks, probably into early July, but we appreciate it. With the presidential election fast approaching, what is on the agenda this weekend for the Trump and Biden campaigns, and how might their strategies play out with voters? We'll be right back.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That desired farm, it's a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
Welcome back to CBS News. Here's a quick look at some of the big stories we're following for you this morning. In Parkland, Florida, the demolition of a building at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School is underway this morning. The specific building was the location of the 2018 mass shooting where gunmen shot and killed 17 people. It hasn't been used since the massacre, but it did serve as critical evidence at the murderer's trial. Officials hope to wrap up demolition by August when students return from summer vacation.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul is considering a partial ban on face masks in New York City in the subway system. It comes amid a rise in anti-Semitic incidents involving people wearing masks. On Monday, masked protesters took over a crowded subway car demanding that, quote, Zionists raise their hands. New York's anti-mask law was repealed due to COVID-19. Supporters of a mask ban say it will force protesters to show their faces